Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, hey, Euan. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm all right. I just had Zoom now has a virtual assistant, which is obviously not very good at assisting. So
What
I got
happened?
I got stuck. It's like, tell me the meeting you want to go to. And I was like, well, I just hit the button. That was the meeting I wanted to go to. I don't know.
How about
It's
the
hard to,
meeting that is scheduled for now? How about we start with that one?
yeah, the link that I used to get here. How about that? That was a good one. We could start with that one.
Yes.
Um, so is who have we got on? Um,
Well, I'm here in case you guys are looking for me. I'm in the Zoom.
oh, yeah, I was looking for you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. Glad to be here. Glad to be talking to you. Nice to meet you, Kris, by the way. I think it's the
Nice to
first
meet you
time we
too, Alex.
actually
Yeah.
talk to one another. I'm reading your stuff once in a while on Substack, so it's always good
Awesome.
stuff. So
Thanks.
yeah,
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I enjoy reading your stuff as well. Yeah, I follow you quite closely on Substack. It's awesome.
thank you.
So, before we start, I have to sort of get a preemptive apology going on. One of my ears is all kind of fucked up, so I can hear, but I don't know how loud I'm talking. So, if I appear to be shouting at you, it's just because I have no volume modulation. So I apologize for that in advance. Are you in Europe at the moment, or are you in Dubai?
I'm in Dubai. I'm basically spending my the cold months of Europe. I'm spending them in Dubai. So usually that's from late September to early May, and then the rest of the time I'm in Europe. As you can guess from those that don't know me from my accent, I'm French. So most of the time I spend that in south of France or Paris. And yeah, I think it's the best period to be in Europe, and then the rest of the time I'm outside here in the UAE.
Yeah, when you said the warm parts, I was like, because when I lived in England, the warm parts are probably like 2 weeks in June, and that's pretty
Yeah.
much.
So
Um,
tell me about it because I lived in London for about 10 years, a little bit less than 10 years. And actually I remember vividly my last winter, and I was thinking this is the last time I'm doing that to myself. And it's not even because it's freezing cold, but it's just the lack of light, the
yeah,
lack of everything. And I just remember, yeah, the days in April where everybody, you start to have those first very nice days, and everybody start running into the grass and the parks and having pubs at the beers at the pub, and that's so nice. But you know that like you have to soak it in because it's 2, 3 days, and then that's also going to be the max of everything you're going to see between April and September. But I love the UK. I actually prefer the UK than France.
I mean, it always made me. I don't know. I've always found it strange that the English invented tennis and cricket. Cricket is a game where you need 5 days uninterrupted by rain. It's like I could have understood why this was invented in Australia, but it could also be why England's not as good as Australia or India. Anyway, so let's get talking about whatever. Give me a little bit of background on you. Like, where did you grow up? Where'd you go to college? What did you study? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so well, where did I grow up? So I'm French. I grew up in Paris, suburbs of Paris, and then South America for a little while because this is where my family is from. So the Caribbeans, French Guiana, all this kind of fun stuff. My dad was an engineer, and that's really how I got into numbers, not heavy programming or anything like this, but science was quite important for him and for us at home. But then I finished I mean, I did most of my studies in Paris and finished them in the UK. So basically in France, you have that concept of prep school. So for 2 years, you're going to be working really, really hard. My course was mostly the scientific one, but related to, you know, business school and stuff like this. So it wasn't the full-on engineering background. It was a mix of geopolitics and then a lot of math. But unfortunately, France is I mean, a lot of the stuff we hear about France are true, right? It's quite elitist. And after I finished those 2 years, I went into a business school. I knew I wanted to work in finance. I knew I wanted to work on the trading floor to be precise. And then, yeah, you have people that start to tell you, yeah, no, your score's not good enough. You should have been in engineering. Yeah, we don't really care if you know how to do math and stuff like this. If you want to go in finance, you're gonna have to go in the back office. And I was like, yep, no, that's not gonna happen. So I crossed the channel. I went to the UK because over there, the only thing I really had to do, I mean, I did a few interviews for a graduate program when I was in business school. I had a gap year to do, and basically, you do a few tests, making sure that like, yeah, you actually can do what you said you can do. Because I think they realize much better than in France that at 20, 21 years old, you don't know much. As long as you're educated, you can code a little bit, you can probably count a little bit, and by a little bit it means a lot, then you're fine. So really, yeah, like it was late 2010. I got myself in a gap year in a program in the UK at a prop trading house. I didn't know what it was, called Schneider Trading at the time. Um, and it was quite intense, but it wasn't necessarily the sexy stuff. Usually when I tell people like, oh yeah, I started trading, that was my first job. Literally, I was still in school. People, they have that vision of a super glamorous vision of what you can do, right? Like, oh yeah, like it must have been amazing, and you're trading all this cool stuff, especially now if you're an option trader. But that's not how I started at all. I was doing future startup, so between stuff that really were not sexy. I don't know if anybody will understand what it is, but we were basically trading short-term interest rates in Europe. So Euribor against the 2 years on the bond curve in the German bond curve. So Euribor against Schatz. And then slightly when you start to understand the setup concept, and it's a very key concept, and that's really what gave me the foundation of everything I do. And I think there's a lot of merit to go into some of those programs and learn how it's done. It's because you understand that like it's a statistical arbitrage that you do, right? So if you buy something, you sell something. It was all obviously a little bit into macro, but first and foremost, you understood that like, yeah, you trade a process between two products, and you don't spend time looking into technical analysis charts and stuff like this. That gives you a good understanding of risk, right? Like once again, if you buy your IBOR, you know that Schatz is going to go up. They tend to move opposite to one another. So you understand at a very early age, the concept of being hedged and the concept of hedge, right? You need to have a statistical edge and you need to be hedged. We don't want to have risk in the book that is not going to be managed in one way or another. So you start with this Euribor Schatz, and then we move to the German yield curve. But if you remember the market in 2011, it was the beginning of the European debt crisis. So needless to say that all of those stuff that on paper were pretty, statistically significant and been reverting, and you could do a lot of tests on them. Well, that all goes out the window when you have the market that decide that the 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 rate on Greek debt or Irish or Portugal is not what it should be, and ultimately they really want the German stuff because it's the safest. So we basically moved out of Euribor and everything Europe, and we moved to stuff like 10 years Canada, 10 years US, but same idea. You buy one, you sell another one. That worked really well. Then we did Canada against Australia. So a lot of future stuff really to learn the ropes. And then I moved into a team because that's how it works, right? Like it's funny now to hear about all those spot shop and strategies and like at Citadel where you have a lot of like pods and teams. And I'm thinking back in the days, already 20 years ago in prop house, that's pretty much what they were doing. So I moved to a team. They're like, okay, yeah, this guy is. We want to have you on the desk with us. And they started to show me a different side of trading. So same ideas. You don't want to do anything stupid that doesn't have any statistical significance. But in a prop house, you eat what you kill. So you need to always be looking for trades that make sense. And the really good trades, at least the stuff the one trade they used and that really got me to understand the concept of edge, but the next, the next step was trading CHF against euros. So I don't know if you remember, but basically same, those were crazy times. You have one day the national bank in the central bank of Switzerland that decide that the peg between euro and the Swiss franc is going to be 120. And so you had a lot of people that were basically buying every time you were going close to 120, you were buying at 120 because you knew it would go back up. So we were obviously doing this. But then our desk manager was basically telling us, yeah, but you guys also have to do the other way around. And obviously, because you could see from the data that, yeah, like it was unlikely that that stuff would go crazy high. You are looking at the data, it makes sense. And also because he was always telling us, yeah, one day that stuff's going to blow up. And obviously, yeah, one day they just removed the peg and it was happy days. But that's not the trade that we come up with. And that's the other side that the prop house taught me really well. It's a trade we heard at the pub, actually. We knew some guys that were doing that stuff, and then one day we decided to do that. And that's also how we got into vol trading, by the way, an option. You have a lot of good conversation and good ideas that you hear at the pub in the UK. And yeah, a lot of people were doing that stuff. Actually, a lot of people. It was funny enough, it was people from banks that were not necessarily, they were looking at us like, oh yeah, you're prop guys, but like, you're a bit of, you're these people we don't really want to talk to because, I mean, you're fine at the pub, but you're not going to be able to work with us in any sort of capacity because you took a different path. But
That's
yeah,
kind
like
of a
there was,
good point, though, isn't it? It's like everyone from outside seems to think that everything is such an amazing secret. You can't tell anything to anyone because the edge will immediately go away. But yeah, you go to any pub in the city in London and people are just blathering about what they're doing all the time.
yeah,
And that's
you
always the
just
case. Anytime you get a bunch of traders together, you can basically just ask them what they do and they'll tell you.
pretty
Because
much.
that's not the secret.
Yeah, pretty much. At the end of the day, the hard part is never understanding where the edge is. You just have to be nice. I mean, if you're curious and you're nice and you go to people, exactly what you said, people will tell you. But then the hard part is really in the implementation. And there's so many ways that things can go wrong when you start trading that like, yeah, like knowing about it is I would say 20%. But then actually trading it and implementing it is really where the hard stuff start. Um, but yeah, like if you go down a pub in London, where I used to work, like yeah, you wouldn't hear anyone talk about technical analysis or, I mean, now it's everywhere, like gamma flows or anything like that. Like I don't think you would hear any of that stuff these days, but yeah, you would hear, hey, by the way, guys, there is that stuff. There is that. Here's another crazy story. One day, yeah, we go down at the pub, and then there's these guys that start talking about that weird move they see in gold, for instance. They start saying like, oh yeah, if you're basically short gold overnight and you're long gold throughout the day, that stuff tends to make crazy money. And then you start to like have a few more beers and stuff, and people start talking a little bit about it, and then you understand why. Like it's apparently because yeah, you have a fixing between five banks, and turns out that like um, eight would be very nice if the price of the fixing would be at a certain price every single day. you start digging a little bit into it. First of all, the data makes sense. Then you start looking into that that's fixing mechanism, and you see that like, yeah, what these guys are talking about is actually true. And yeah, then you again don't go all in, right? But more often than not, you're gonna get good ideas like this. And then once in a while, you still have to. Once in a while, you're the one who's discovering something, either because you spend enough time in the data or whatever, or you observe. You need to observe and make sure that you see everything on the marketplace. And the example I'm gonna give is really falls into the category of, yeah, like alpha you'll find, and when you find it, you need to exploit it as much as possible and as quickly as possible. So basically, we were trading sometimes with banks and other people, like a little, right? We had a small book, but sometimes we could. And there were these guys in a bank, in an Asian bank, an Asian Japanese bank, to be precise, without telling the name exactly. For some reason, for the customer, they used to replicate a product of that was replicating the returns of the DAX. So it's basically, think of like a CFD or like a future, but dedicated for their markets, for their audience in Japan, that was replicating the DAX. And I can't even remember how we found that stuff. I think we just saw it, literally. It was delayed by like sometimes 1 minute, 30 seconds to a minute or anything like this. So you're like, well, that's super easy. Then you buy this one, you sell that one. So you try a little bit to see if it's gonna work, and you realize that like, yeah, it actually does work. And yeah, like there was a year where that was basically our biggest trade. And when they shut it down, we were obviously quite pissed off, but then you're always thinking like, God damn it, why were we so conservative on the sizing? We should have really gone all in on that stuff as hard as we could. But it's an adversarial game, so you're also thinking that our boss was also saying like, yeah, but if you do this, they are going to realize very quickly, and they are going to shut it out. So you're always like kind of like walking on eggshells, and you're like, okay, is it the day when they realize and um and they shut everything off? And
Yeah,
okay, they didn't
gamblers
realize.
have that. I mean, the old blackjack players used to talk about that when they found a good game. They were always nervous between not exploiting it enough and exploiting it so much it gets shut off. And they called it the difference between milking the cow and killing the bull. And
Pretty much.
it's still the sort of same issue we have today. That gold thing's interesting, isn't it? Because this is very easy. People can test this as they like. It's it's still there. Like
Yeah.
if you sell gold puts I think they trade GLD puts 3 times a week. If you sell them on the close each day, I mean that makes money. I wouldn't
Yeah,
go
yeah,
too
yeah.
big on
Yeah, I mean it's a trade that, I mean, I was keeping an eye on it. It's a trade that was flat for a while. And again, not to verse into conspiracy theories, but you always have to pay attention. I'm on the side of, you have to do your homework on the data side, but then it's a marketplace, right? And it's human doing stuff, and sometimes very shady stuff. And that specific combination of being short overnight and long throughout the day because of the weirdness around fixing prices, that stuff got shut down. Like it was literally flat for almost 3, 4 years, right when you had the LIBOR scandals, because it was pretty much the same idea as the LIBOR, right? Like people were pretty much manipulating the LIBOR fixing, and then making sure that some prices were nice. And not to say that like those guys got scared on gold, but yeah, for a few years wasn't working anymore at all. And then yeah, it's been a few years now that it's back, especially because gold is back in fashion anyway, so people buy gold again. It goes up overall. But if you want to like seriously beef up your returns, I haven't looked at it in details lately, but yeah, last time I looked, it was there, and I'm pretty sure it's still there.
it. now you founded this Sharpe Two, right? Sharpe2.com, I guess. I don't know what your actual website is. Is that right? Sharpe2.com?
Sharpe2.com. Yeah, it started as a newsletter. Substack, and then yeah, now I have a bunch of tools and analytics that you can find at app.sharpe2.com.
So you basically, okay, so I follow your stuff, right? And I would say, I've said it here before, so this isn't like, news to anyone, and I'm not shilling you, although you did give me a free login, which I appreciate. But I think you're probably one of like 3 or 4 different sites that actually says something that's sensible. So that's kind of impressive.
Yeah.
So most of what you do, though, is based on harvesting volatility risk premium, right?
So yeah, especially in Sharpe2, right? Like that's pretty much how the newsletter has started and what I do for my own trading. So the reason why I started the newsletter, and then we'll have to go back a little bit in time. I started the newsletter because some friends were mad at me in 2022 when I said I went back to trading. They were like, "Oh, great! You're going to be able to tell us all the tips about stocks, what's going on and what's going up and what's going down." And I was like, "That's not at all what I do." I trade volatility, and they were like so pissed at me. Like, what do you mean you basically don't want to tell us the good stuff? So I was like, okay, you know what, guys? Like, when I was on the floor, I had to write a note every single day about what kind of trades you would do or how you would be looking at the market for today. I'll do the same thing right now. I'll publish it on Substack because I don't want to be managing emails and stuff. And if you want to, if you're still interested, we can talk about it at the pub. And then, funny enough, it took off. I don't think because I was saying something particularly interesting, but I think basically my stuff was at the cross section of, okay, there's a ton of courses on the internet, some stuff that are really valuable, some stuff a little bit less, and you don't always have the actual practical implementation. And I think that's the reason why it kind of took off. Because really, like, yeah, like I talk mostly about a signal pretty much every week. I dissect the signals, making sure that, like, yeah, okay, did your thesis actually happened, or was it something a little bit different? But we talk really about trading as if I had to do it on the trading floor at the prop house back in the days. Here are the data. Here is the reason why we think that stuff's going to be making money over the next 2 weeks. And here is really what we trade ultimately. And then 2 weeks after that, let's dissect and see if it did money for the reason we did. Now, I didn't start to build all these analytics to do a newsletter or whatever. After the prop house, basically, I went to work in an AI startup for about 8 years. People often ask me, why did I stop the prop house? I was 26 at the time when I left. The place was getting bought by Marek Spectrum. It was great fun, but I was seeing all my friends getting into AI and machine learning jobs. At the time, we wouldn't even say AI and machine learning, we would say data science. And they were starting to do stuff like, yeah, like fraud detection, building recommender system, and it sounded fun, and I was quite curious about it. And I was like, okay, let me try to go do that thing. And I worked there for about 8 years in a startup that was just purely doing this. And then at the end of it, I joined that startup. You had 30 people, and I left. There was 1,500 people. So the real growth story. And then at some point, you're like, that's not where I wanted to work at the first place. Let me go back to finance. And do I go back to finance in a prop house, or now that I worked in tech and I have a few tech skills, right? I'm not a crazy hardcore engineer, software engineer or whatever, but I now know what the cloud is, what a database is. Let me try to replicate all this stuff because you have the API now. Back in the days, you wouldn't find APIs that would give you option quotes or anything like this. You would find that on the trading floor. But now you find all this stuff. You know how to deal with data infrastructure. Why not try to rebuild all that stuff yourself, and see where you can go with that project? And that's really how it started. Like, how can I replicate all the stuff I had back in the days on the trading floor to make sure I can trade in prop for a few years. And then if it doesn't work, then yeah, you go back to a prop shop or a fund or whatever. Like I wasn't too concerned about where I would land.
The stuff you're doing now, though, is okay. So you're always predicting the variance premium, right? I mean, however you slice it, option selling is always about that. Though, you're using machine learning to do that, right?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
a black box or a gray box?
It's funny the perception that people have about of machine learning. I would even say it's a white box, right? Like you need to understand how you build models. You don't want to. I would not rely on a model that uses features I do not understand, right? Like otherwise, it's a complete black box. A gray box would be the equivalent of I'm not 100% sure how you come up with that decision, but I'm still going to trust you because it kind of makes sense. Which I think for trading is it can be extremely dangerous. You don't want to do that, right? For me, it's a white box because before going into machine learning, I started with what I would say the good old descriptive analytics and what we used to do on the trading floor. So compute your implied volatility properly, compute your realized volatility properly, compute a bunch of features that every trader will understand, right? Like if I talk about the skew or the measure of the curvature on the volatility surface, that's not something that no one understands what it is. And then you pass that to a model that ultimately does score pretty much a bunch of tickers that I have every single day. It does it much faster than you, much more accurate than you, and then you come and you act as a PM and you kind of like, okay, well, the model is spitting this out right now. Those are the explanation, by the way. So now, like that's the good thing about machine learning, right? Something that people often do not understand. You can force the model to explain his decisions. That's something called Sharpe values that rely quite a lot on. And you see that most of the time, like the top features are, yeah, the VRP is super stretched, right? You take VRP 1 month, the Z-score is above is above 2. So yeah, like and on top of that, you have implied volatility that's also super high. And you have, I don't know, the term structure of realized volatility that's backward. I could have come to that conclusion myself. I would not have been able to look at 400 tickers overnight and tell you those are the 4, 5, 6 that you want to pay attention today. That's
So
really what I use ML for.
is it fair to say that to you it's a white box because you built it? Is it a white box to a user of the website, or is it a gray box to them?
That's fair. I think for a user of a website, it would be a gray box. But yeah, it would be a gray box. But if you use it to sharpen your intuition around the markets, it's going to become more and more of a white box. It becomes more and more that junior assistant that you have in some workshops or wherever, that basically start as an intern and gonna have to crush some numbers overnight, and that will come to you as a PM and say, okay, you want to pay attention to that stuff and that stuff, because implied volatility is really high, because backwardation is like this, because vol is like that. And then you come and you're like, yeah, it kind of makes sense, but we already have this in the book right now, so we're not going to be putting that trade on. What else you got? That one, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And even if it starts as a gray box, and I really sometimes it's a bit frustrating in the retail community because some people don't really want to try to understand how that stuff works. They kind of like want to just copy trade. And I think that's a very poor usage of either the Discord or even the Substack, but also sometimes the app, right? Like you really want to use that as a way to sharpen your understanding and your intuition around the market because it's made for that.
Yeah, I've noticed sort of, I don't post much on your Discord, but I read it, and I've noticed some of the people when they started, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, were terrible and didn't know anything about anything. And their questions made that very, very clear. But I was quite impressed that they've put in a lot of work, but also you've done a lot of work educating them. And now a couple of those people are pretty, I mean, I'm not sure I would let them trade my money, but they're in the game now. They sort of know what they're doing and they sort of have a general idea. So I think you've been a pretty effective teacher. I know you don't think of yourself primarily as a teacher, but you must have some sort of knack for it, or at least a huge amount of patience.
My wife would say otherwise, but
Well, that's why you get married, to keep you level-headed.
exactly. But yeah, no, I definitely like it. But I also think as a retail trader, you are at a massive disadvantage. And I learned that the hard way, by the way. You're at a massive disadvantage as someone that's in a pop shop, in a prop house or wherever. Because basically, as a retail trader, you have to be the PM, you have to be the quant team, you have to be the risk manager, you have to be pretty much everything, and you're on your own. And that you have to keep researching trades and idea. That is really hard. Um, Ultimately, what I try to do with the Substack and the Discord, the app, is really yeah, like replicating what I think was the biggest source of edge at the prop house, which is you have colleagues you can ask questions to. You have access to tooling that make your life so much easier as a trader. Like when you arrive on the prop house, you're not going to be recoding everything yourself. Like it doesn't make any sense. You're going to be tapping into APIs that are already there. You're going to be tapping into models that some people have already built. Obviously, you're going to be asked to have enough math background to understand how that stuff is done, but you're not going to be a researcher. You're just tapping into someone else's ideas, and then you're managing your book for it to make sense. And retail traders, you just simply don't have that. You have a bunch of courses and tools everywhere, and even if you understand the theory at the end of the day, you don't have that guy that is at an arm length from you that you're going to say like, okay, well, here is what the market looks like right now. What do you think? And it's not like I'm going to spoon-fed the trade or anyway, that guy on the trading floor would definitely not spoon-fed the trade. I mean, it's a trading job, right? Like you have to do your analysis yourself and find your trades, but sometimes they will put you into the right direction or they will go back and explain to you some key concept, right? Like I think, for instance, something that people do not understand or appreciate enough is that trading option is not any different than managing an insurance business, right? Your job is to simply assess the level of risk in the market right now. I often explain it by saying like, okay, you take realized volatility. That is nothing else than um, you're an insurance car provider, and you're going to say, okay, well, the last 30 days for for like a white man of 40 plus years old, the average claim was about $50, saying some crazy numbers. Turns out that right now on the market, you can sell that insurance for about $100. That's implied volatility. Do you think this is a good trade, you as an actuarian, as an insurance provider or not? And then because it's a market and it's financial market, do stuff always move. So you basically every day being presented with a new set of cards, and your goal is to say, okay, well, the average the average claim over the last 30 days was X amount, and now I can get paid X amount to insure someone over the next 30 days. Do I want to take that trade or not? And machine learning or not, you need to start by having a very deep understanding of the product and what you trade and the business case that's behind what you trade. And usually things start to make sense, and it's not really rocket science at the end of the day, right? Like some people need to be hedged for whatever reason, either because they got caught off guard, either because they have the mandate to do that. Like there's plenty of reason why people would buy option. You have to be in a position to have everything to decide if you are willing to sell an option to someone that needs one right now. If you're willing to be the seller of last resort. But for that, you need to understand deeply your business case. And I think in the Discord, I insist on that enough. It's not a Discord or the Substack or wherever where it's going to be heavy on math. I don't spend like crazy hours explaining math to people because I remember at the prop house anyway, like, yeah, sure, you would. I personally spend time into research paper because I like it, but I had colleagues, they they barely knew how to count, as they would say in the UK when they hired me.
I've had colleagues who barely knew how to read.
Exactly. So it's like
I mean,
explain
trading
to me
is
the
not
business
it's
case.
not mathematics. It's a different thing.
Yeah, it's you have to. I mean, what I often say when I write about it, it's like at the end of the day, it's a market, right? It's not any different than the market, the fruit or the vegetable markets that you see at the corner of your house. You go spend like half a day over there, and you see how the buyers are acting, how the sellers are acting, because you see them moving their prices throughout the day. It's exactly the same thing. If one day people start to see that like there's a lot of demand for oranges, well, guess what? And if you spend 4 hours looking at the prices, you will see that that guy is slowly increasing the price of his oranges. Or at least maybe it's only the market in France or in the Caribbeans, but that's that's an intuition I got from teenage days. Like we always do those weird jobs as teenagers, and I remember really well going with my uncles to sell some sugar canes and stuff like this. And yeah, like they would move their prices based on what people would come and buy that day. If no one is buying your product and it get close to 12, well, you're going to be discounting it quite a bit. And it's the same for options. If no one's coming to buy insurance today, well, guess what? Implied volatility is going to go down because people just want to get rid of their options, so they just discount them. But if everybody for some reason now wants some options, well, the price of option is going to be a little bit higher. So having a deep understanding outside of the math, having a deep understanding of what you trade, why people need what you're selling or what you're buying, right? Why someone would sell you that insurance that you're buying right now. You need to understand that, and that has nothing to do with machine learning or gamma flows or deep statistical hedge or whatever. Like go back to the basic of the basic of okay, like who if we were removing the screens, removing the keyboards, removing everything, and you go back to the pit or whatever, why would someone sell me that option right now? And why would I sell that option to someone right now?
So, okay, so machine learning is basically just regression, right? It's a nonlinear adaptive regression, and the math. I always tell people the math doesn't matter. What matters is the inputs you're putting in. Do they have
100%.
predictive ability? So, I always tell people if something doesn't work on a linear regression, you can probably just give up because
100%.
you don't want to torture it with machine learning because you're going to end up overfitting to noise or whatever. So what do you think? I don't know what you want to tell us here. What do you think generally the most important things for telling you an option is overpriced? Like if I had to get a simple rule of thumb, what would be the things I should look at?
The first one would be so the first one for sure would be VRP, but VRP Z-score. right? Like it's interesting what you said. Like obviously you don't want, but you, as we used to say I was at the ML startup, you still want to massage them. And by messaging them, you want to Z-score all of them, right? It's still a VRP, but Z-score it, right? That makes it easier for you as a human being to interpret what's going on, but also for the model. If you see I went into option and then I started reading your book like 15 years ago, and immediately makes sense. You have to find the moment where the VRP is the most stretched. That's one. The second most predictive stuff is IV stretch itself, right? Like if you have VRP super stretch, IV super stretched, you start to be in good places where you're probably going to be making money. Now, these two things just taken by themselves, they have issues because obviously in markets you have regime. I think it's very important to pay attention to the regime you're in, and ultimately you sell implied volatility and you try to get a view and get a sense of, is the risk over the next 30 days that basically I don't know, right? Realized volatility, is it going to go up or is it going to go down? So the next important features, I think, are anything that's related to the slope of your term structure. And I would start by that's what I see in my data, right? Anyway, when I say the stuff that are the most important for the machine learning model, it's the slope of the realized volatility term structure, which again makes total sense. You had a big shock into the market, so you're gonna have 3 days realizable much higher than 30 days realizable. Usually that stuff tends to go back into contango faster than implied volatility, by the way.
So you mean like vol tones, right? You don't mean different sampling frequencies. You mean different lengths.
Yeah, I literally mean you see how you build a term structure for implied volatility, you build the same thing for realized vol, and then you would compute the slope between 3 days and 30 days, for instance, or 9 days and 2 months, or 1 month and 3 months. And if that stuff is negative, you're backward. Are you really, really backward? Like, is it really stretched over the last 3, 6 months? Then it's probably not going to stay like this for a long time. But using those Z-score is extremely important to ultimately when you're trying to sell volatility, you're looking for moments where stuff are out of place, out of whack. The Z-score gives you this. Because if you focus on like the realized volatility term structure or the implied volatility term structure can stay backward for a long time. In and of itself, it doesn't really matter. That just describe what the market thinks of that specific product. But you want to see the moment where the market thinks, get out of his senses and start thinking, like, oh my God, something's really terrible is going to happen right now. And this you will see into a Z-score.
So what about if I'm selling vol on, like, I don't know, Tesla, is the level of the overall market volatility important? Like, does it behave different in different VIX regimes, or do you not care about that?
Yeah, that is intrinsically captured not so much by the implied level, but usually by the vol of vol level. So usually the highest the implied vol, the highest the vol of vol of that implied vol. You rarely have you rarely have something that has 80% realized implied volatility that doesn't have high vol of vol. And that's the same idea, right? Like in and of itself, having 80% implied vol, okay, that tells you something, but you shouldn't be too scared about it. Like if we go back to the business case, It's like having that 20-year-old that comes to you and say like, oh yeah, I want an insurance on my Ferrari, by the way, and I'm about to go across the United States. That guy, and you see that he has a bunch of alcohol and he has, a few girls and stuff like that. So clearly he's gonna have fun. It's clearly a risky customer. Now, that shouldn't drive your decision to say, I'm not willing to insure you. You still want to do some sort of background check on this guy and decide whether or not you're going to take that trade. When it comes to implied volatility, usually that stuff is given by vol. If you have crazy vol, yeah, like stay out. It's this, like I write about this a lot because it's an intuition I think people miss. Vol it sounds complicated, but it's basically the realized volatility of implied volatility. People sometimes get scared and they see VIX, like in November last year, they see VIX moving 4 or 5 points in a day, right? And they're like, oh my God, like it's really risky these days, and I'm scared and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like but you look at vol, it's high, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that VIX can move 4 or 5 points at the moment. Does that mean that when VIX has moved 4 or 5 points, you don't want to sell it? Probably not. In fact, you want to wait for those moments where like it has moved 4 or 5 points, because now everything becomes stretched again and you can get into the market. You're correctly compensated for your risk. But if you sell it, if we go back to Tesla and you sell Tesla when it's at 80, that's probably a bad trade. You probably want to wait for Tesla to be at 100 vol to start selling it. But in any case, you're gonna see Tesla at 100 vol when its vol tends to be higher. Now, like, yeah, it's regime dependent. Like if it's super stressed, you probably don't want to be trading that stuff anyway. And stocks, I tend to stay away from them because you have idiosyncratic risk associated with them. So yeah, like it's just something you just have less edge. I trade a lot of ETFs. I trade stocks once in a while if the marketplace is quiet and the likelihood of idiosyncratic risk diminishes. But yeah, otherwise just do ETF. Stay reasonable in the vol bracket, in the realized vol bracket that you're considering. These days, like we talked a lot about Boyle, for instance, or Nugget in the Discord. Yeah, like at the end of the day, you're in the business of dealing variance. That's what you deal with. If you're not comfortable with something, and if you don't understand that you just sold implied volatility on something that has 80% realized volatility, you're in for a few surprises. That stuff moves, right? Like it's going to take 5% one day, lose 6% one day. If you don't understand that, well, first of all, you need to go back to the drawing board and understand what you trade. And then you need to put that in the broader context of your account and also your own emotional space, right? Are you comfortable with, I mean, Boyle had a crazy move, right? Like he was at 16 and back almost at 13, like 2, 3 days. That's insane. But at the same time, this is where you go back to the data. I mean, it had 70, 80% realized at the back of last week. You do a Monte Carlo on that stuff. It's not unreasonable. It could have happened, and it actually did happen.
Yeah, it's actually interesting when you sort of say you'd spend more time on ETFs than stocks. I think this is where like CAPM, right, and actually knowing a bit of finance should give you a hint here. The index has got one risk factor, right? It is its own risk factor, that's it. But a stock's got three at least, right? A stock's got the market risk, but it's also got sector risk and stock-specific risk. So instead of trying to estimate one thing, you're implicitly trying to estimate three things, which is what I think. I think trading stocks is stock options is much harder than trading index options.
100%.
Not if you're a market maker. If you're a market maker, it's easier because they're fucking wide. But
yeah,
well, how about this rule of thumb, right? So you're saying that people don't want to do this because it's risky and they're scared. Is it enough to say if people think that, it's probably a trade they should do because other people are going to be more scared, and so everything's going to be stretched? Because I find a lot of times people want to sell vol, when not much is going on, but they don't want to sell vol when it's going crazy. Do you think going crazy is enough, or do you think you wait for vol to come in after it's gone crazy?
So it depends, right? And it depends. And now you have so many different products that you can use. So let's start with markets getting crazy. Let's be there to sell vol. I wrote an article about 2 years ago. I haven't run into the data again, but you could sell 1DTs overnight when VIX has gone crazy throughout the day, and in particular VVIX, and just remove that risk overnight. So you sell it at like the close, you buy it back right before the market opens. You tend to see that people are overestimating overnight risk, basically, and that stuff works pretty well. So in those circumstances, you want to be that seller of last resort. Now, if you ask me, you will always be making much more money once the spike has passed than if you're getting too active and too busy when you're in the middle of the spike, right? When you can understand that from so many angles. One of them is, well, first of all, the market is not stupid. So if you start selling vol when we are in the middle of something, much more often than not, implied is actually understating realized. And this is where a lot of people get caught because they tend to think, okay, well, I'm going to sell puts anyway. But when you sell puts, it's not a pure vol trade. You also have a directional component, and you're basically betting that stuff are going to come down, and therefore stocks are somewhat going to mean revert. So it's not 100% a vol trade, because if you were doing that as a vol trade, you would sell variance. So you would sell something much closer to a strangle or a delta, a 20 delta or whatever. And you would realize, especially if you do that in the short dated stuff, more often than not, you're going to get murdered because you have a big move, and then all of a sudden your straddle is out of, I mean, you're losing a lot of money on that stuff because realized vol is still high enough, and implied isn't capturing, or the market isn't willing to overpay when they know that anyway things are going to come down. But then, and we had a great example last year, where for 6 months, and I mean, it's still the case, right? Like you had whatever you want to call it, the Trump risk premium, the tariff risk premium, where you had 6 points. Sometimes I think I remember writing about 10 or 12 points VRP in the S&P somewhere in end September, early October. This is where you go on Reddit and everybody's a genius because they sell options and it makes money. But it's true, right? It's a little bit what I was saying about the numerator trade up earlier on. When it's there, you just want to hammer it, and it's more often there here when people are still burned by what just happened. They're still a bit scared, right? Fund managers and all sorts of committees are going to be like, hey, we never know what's going to happen. Trump just did that, whatever. Our mandate now is changing a bit. Let's hedge a little bit more. So you have that increasing demand for options anyway. And even if the market has come down, because these people have so many committees and whatnot, that variance risk premium tends to be more pronounced and it becomes easier. It's not easier because now the market is calm and okay, like the market is calm and you can just simply harvest. It is easier in the case where the spike was big enough, people got burnt enough to keep buying options and mechanically increasing that VRP. But you also have situations, and I've seen situations where, like, especially in stocks, where you had a crazy move, the move is now behind us, and then people don't stick around lingering buying options. The variance risk premium is back to almost to super thin. And if you come in there and start selling premium in those same, like at some point something really bad is gonna happen to you. But right now, like yeah, like stuff like SPY, I mean, we had 10 points on the green and stuff. Like yeah, like you don't need machine learning to put the trade on. 10 points VRP on SPY, if you lose money on that stuff, that can happen, right? Like you always need to be careful. But it means something really bad happened or you screwed up your trade, which also can happen. Um, but yeah, SPY, oil these days, you have a ton of premium on oil. Bonds, you have a ton of premium on bonds. All the Bitcoin, all the stuff that tends to react a lot to what's happening in the news, geopolitics, and especially the last year because of Trump. More often than not, you're making money selling options these days. You asked me that question in 2023. Well, obviously there was no spike happening, but we were in a similar regime when realized volatility was low. You didn't have any variance risk premium. You were not making up. You were not making money selling options. Like I was doing some very different stuff. I was just selling risk reversals, just belong, try to capture a little bit of stuff on the skew side, but don't hammer the short vol side when it's simply not working. So when realized volatility is low and when the spike is now far off from us, so far off from us, then people are like, yeah, that's not worth it. Because at the end of the day, like people, you make money because people buy options, and you tend to see that the further away you are from the last spike, people are not burnt enough. And same in investment committees, you're gonna have people saying like, hey, we just paid 3, 4 points of performance last year because of those hedges that never monetized. Do we still want to keep buying those hedges over the next 6 months? And all of a sudden, the demand for option goes down, the VRP compress, and then it's harder for anybody that sells vol. And then you have something crazy that happens, and then now people buy hedges again, and you tend to make money again.
So I said something nice about you before, and I'm gonna say something nice now, and then I'm gonna say something I absolutely hate. So something you did today, I thought was interesting. You've been short options on Boyle for quite a while, right? And that's fine. I can totally see why, because Boyle was really stretched, and we know it's winter and all that stuff. And then Boyle went nuts over the last couple of days, and you sold more, which to me makes perfect sense, right? It's like you had some edge, so you had a position. You've now got more edge, so you want a bigger position, which I think is great. A lot of people don't like doing that because they're like, but I lost money, so I should get out of the trade. Whereas I think the correct thing, well, I know the correct thing to do is you've got more edge, get into the trade. If you have edge, get in. If you don't have edge, get out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's where I'm going to slam you a bit. One of your rules is you take profits when you make, I think, generally about 25% premium. That's pretty inconsistent, right?
Well, this is where, I mean, I agree. It's true we can debate about that stuff for hours, but I tend to put that back into the reality of trading as a solo trader. And um, it's hard. It's hard because it's operationally expensive. And the 25% rule is just there to force yourself to reconsider, should I go back into that trade or not? Should I take it out or not? And basically, it forces you, do I still have hedge or not? Because more often than not, I see people putting a trade on, it works really well, and then they fall in love with the position. Oh my God, it's green. Like, let me just harvest a little bit more theta and whatever. And then something happens, and now they're like, oh God damn it, I should have taken it off. And so first of all, you don't understand. It's not so much that you should have taken it off. You need to understand why, right? It's really causal and inference and going back to, well, yeah, but the moment where you fall in love with the position, all of a sudden your statistical edge was gone. So you should have taken out at the first place. Now I agree with you. We can optimize. You could say, yeah, in some situations, um, you should stay longer in the trade anyway, because there is so much hedge right now, for instance, in Boyle and whatever, that like maybe taking it out at 25% is a little bit, like it's a bit sheepish. You can probably stay in the trade longer, like or traders, you're in the business of taking risk, yeah. But I think it forces you, or at least for me, right? Like it forces me to always reassess the thesis and thinking, okay, would I be in that position right now? Because the market has moved, right? Like you sold variance at about 35 DTs, something like this. Now you're at 30, 28 DTs. Okay. Uh, do you still have hedge in the position? And if you still have hedge, yeah, like sometimes I leave stuff longer. Actually, we had the case on silver this week where it was absolutely insane what just happened. I think we took a trade on silver somewhere mid last week. Same, great. You had probabilities on your end, stuff was stretched, whatever, put the trade on. I log in Monday, not Monday, but Tuesday. Um, I see a lot of people in the Discord saying like, "Oh yeah, we're taking profit on that stuff." I'm looking into the app, and I'm like, that stuff still has edge. Like if it was me, I would put the trade on right now on silver. My strong goal is not completely out of work. You have a little bit of deltas, but it's okay. Leave the trade on. And like literally in one day, implied vol got obliterated in silver. And then I took it off literally just one day after all these guys, and it's like then I think I took almost $1 more out of the trade. So it's not so much that I'm in love with 25%, that I think it forces you to have discipline to revisit the reason why you're in the trade at the first place, and um, therefore potentially leave it longer.
I think for a lot of people, especially beginning options traders, right? You actually have to force them to wait for 25%, because a lot of them will be like, I made 10% of the premium, I'm going to take it off, that's awesome. And they don't realize that when they lose, like Boyle, they're going to lose multiple hundreds percent, right? So you've got to let the profits run. You can't just be taking tiny little profits all the time. So that whole thing about you can't go broke taking profits, you can if the losses are big enough. If
Yeah,
all you have is profits, that's one thing, but let me
yeah,
know when that happens.
yeah, no, that makes sense. But I also think it's because people end up trading stuff that don't have hedge at the first place. When you have strong statistical edge, in 4 or 5 days, you're at 20%. And then you can already start to revisit, okay, 20%, do I want to be there again? Or I have a small account, and right now there's a new situation that's popping up on the screen that's probably better than where I am right now. So maybe I liberate some margin and then get into that new thing. But for a lot of these people that take profit after 10%, it's because more often than not, they just sell something almost randomly, and then they get burned, and then yeah, they develop all those bad habits. Oh, now I see a little bit of profit. Let me just take it. I think if you have a statistical edge, it becomes, and I see it in the Discord at the beginning, people are like, oh my God, I'm selling a stronghold. Usually I run condors, my risk is unlimited. And then they see us doing it, and they're like, yeah, actually it's fine. Again, like don't do that unhedged, right? We can talk about this if you want. I'm not saying you just go short vol, balls to the wall, don't think about it. You need to have some sort of hedge somewhere. But then yeah, let the if you have a hedge, then let the trade plays out.
Okay, so we're sort of at the end of our time.
Yeah.
If people want to know more about Sharpe Two, and I would, okay, so we at Robot Wealth, as everyone on our side knows, we don't do a ton of stuff on options. We're mainly Delta One focused. Well, Kris is. I don't do shit, but Kris is mainly Delta One focused. So honestly, I think if anyone really wants to get into the vol world, the Sharpe Two is a pretty good place to. Well, I was going to say start, but to be honest, you could probably finish there as well. I honestly think it's better than a lot of shit I've seen in prop firms. So
Thank you.
if people want to, see more of it, obviously sharpe2.com. Do they have, do you have a Twitter? Do you have LinkedIn? What should people do?
I have Twitter. I'm trying to get more active on Twitter. Same, it's Sharpe2 with 2 underscore. But the right place to start is really the Substack, sharpe2.com. That's where I do most of my writing. If you want to get access to all the analytics, because I'm putting it out there because I know it's hard for retail traders. You don't want to be rebuilding all of these assets. Again, you don't have to. I understand for some people it's a hobby and you like it, and that's fine. But otherwise, I know how complicated it is to do that stuff. I realize that like some people were looking for it. I'm willing to like rent my analytics. You can find all of that stuff at app.sharpe2.com. And then yeah, these days you can try it for almost nothing for 2 weeks. It's $14. So that's usually a great way to get access to the analytics, to get access to the Discord, to start to get your feet wet into vol trading, delta neutral, not trying to predict where that stuff's going to be, and yeah, harvest the vol premium.
Yeah, like there's a million sites now that will let you scan all the stocks by the level of variance premium, and people think that's all you need. And
No, like
trust me, it is not. But I really do think what you're doing is good, and I think you've added quite a lot to the world, and I think people should take a look at it. And again, I am not getting paid for saying this. I really do think you're doing great stuff. So thanks for coming on. Appreciate talking to you.
Thanks, Euan.
Also, Alex does a weekly market sort of roundup call, which is worth listening to as well on Sundays. Usually Sunday, sometime around the middle of the day, America time. So,
Yeah.
awesome. So thanks a lot.
Well, thanks for having me. I see some people asking, yeah, the Discord, you basically just go so the link for the URL is app.sharpe2.com. That's where you're gonna find everything, but just type Sharpe2 into Google. Normally we should be in there fairly easily. And then yeah, thanks for having me. I mean, so the little story, you inspired all of that, right? Like my first my first my first way in option land was, oh, let's just listening to the guys at the pub. Let's just the stuff is super wide. Let's just quote a little bit narrower than the market makers. No, that doesn't work. You shouldn't do that. We learned that the hard way, and then we did some stuff that were working, and then but really looking into startup again. So we're basically buying vol in the DAX and selling vol in the US, whatever the other way around. And then one day I found your book, Volatility Trading, and then the rest is history. It made immediate sense, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay, that's the direction we're going, and never look back. So
Yeah,
thanks to
thanks
you.
for it's kind of like what you're experiencing now, right? You do something basically for your own benefit because you want to do it, and it turns out it helps a whole bunch of other people. And
Very much.
it's like I'm glad it helped people, but that's not why I did it. Which no one seems to really understand until you go through the process, which you now know about. So anyway, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Everyone should go and look at that stuff. Really, it doesn't hurt. Sign up for 2 weeks. So thanks a lot, Alex. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks, Kris. Thanks, Euan. And
Thanks,
see you around.
Alex. Yeah, appreciate you making the time. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, everyone. I'll get this uploaded to the website, and I'll get the replay posted on Discord shortly. Thanks everyone for making the time. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you on Discord.